How is everyone? Today I will split into two personalities. One will interview me, and the other will answer questions. Is that how this is going to work? Okay, great. In case anyone else is wondering, I'm wearing a coat because it's like we've had an Arctic snap here in Pittsburgh, right? Which you all know what that is. Yeah, it's freezing. But it's nice, because I live in California. So I can come and visit it, but I don't have to shovel my parents' driveway so that they can get to work, or anything like that. So, anybody here from Pittsburgh? Okay. Anybody not from Pittsburgh? Pretty even. But that guy screaming back there, I think he tipped the scales. So yeah, all right. That's right. All right. Anybody know where Mount Lebanon is? I went to Mount Lebo. I was a Blue Devil. South side? South side. You go to Mike and Tony's Gyros? It's the best. Love Mike and Tony's. Mike, and what is the old commercial? Mike and Tony's Gyros make your day. Remember that? It might have been like a DVE song, I think. Anyway. My girlfriend is here. She's from Uniontown. Go Red Raiders. I've met like 10 Uniontown people here today. She gets really embarrassed, but I tell everybody she just was voted into the Uniontown High School Hall of Fame. How about that? Yeah. That's right. She is holding Bubbles. You all know, that's Bubbles. I'll tell you a funny story about Bubbles. So I shot a movie called Nonas. Oh, hey, how you doing? Whoops. We kind of started without you. Glad you're here. Hi, how are you?
Really good.
Hi.
Oh my gosh.
I know, I'm tall. I know.
Well, welcome back to Pittsburgh as always.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, we're just talking about Pittsburgh. Yeah. I was going to tell a very quick story about my Bubbles.
Go.
And then we'll get started.
No, you keep going.
Okay, so funny story. I shot a movie called Nonas, which is about a real-life story about a restaurant in Staten Island where a guy got all these old Italian grandmas to cook the food. So you go to the restaurant, the grandmas cook your food. So we shot this great movie. It's Vince Vaughn and I play he plays the real guy. I play his best friend. Drea De Matteo from The Sopranos plays my wife. Susan Sarandon's in it. Lorraine Bracco from Goodfellas, Soprano, she's in it. Talia Shire. Adrian, Godfather, Connie. Brenda Vaccaro is in it. Linda Cardellini's in it. Lots of people with vowels at the end of their names. So we're shooting in Hoboken, New Jersey, which is notorious for like its bar scene. And Vince Vaughn and I are out on a Sunday afternoon walking around, and I'm holding Bubbles, and we're walking down the street, and everybody's drinking outside. It's a nice day. They're all day drinking at these bars. And Vince Vaughn and I are walking down the street, and we hear a group scream from inside of one of these bars, Bubbles! So to show you the level of celebrity that my dog Bubbles has. And she's here today, so there you go. Yeah. And she hates clapping. And happiness and conviviality, she hates it all. Anyway, that's it. All right. Hi.
Hey.
Hey.
That's a great way to start things off.
Nice to see you. Yeah.
It's nice to see you. So I've just got some questions for you, and they got some questions for you. Or you can just kind of hang out and talk, whatever you're comfortable
Let's do a little of both.
Okay, let's do both.
Yeah.
So CMU grad, Pitt. I went to Pitt for a while. Mm-hmm. How did all of that really prepare you for your career now?
Well, I'll clear that up. Yes, I went to Pitt for a year. I didn't get into CMU out of high school. I was more of, I was a student and an athlete, and I wasn't a part of the drama club. I had made my own movies up to that point, edited, directed, acted in my own films. And so theater was kind of the next frontier, but I had a lot of ground to make up for, and I didn't get into, CMU is really hard to get into as an actor. I didn't get in right out of high school, so, and I didn't apply anywhere else. So I went to Pitt for a year, because it was like $400 a semester or something. And so I went to Pitt, applied late, went to Pitt, and just worked my ass off for a year. And that following year, I walked across the street and I auditioned again. Didn't apply anywhere else. And that time I got in. So there was a year at Pitt as I was auditioning for everything, working my tail off, with the idea that at that point I would know if I was good enough. But out of high school, I just didn't have enough runway, really, I think, to know if I was good enough to be in CMU. So if they would have rejected me then, I don't know where I would have gone. But yeah.
So what do you think makes the CMU program so special for theater or acting?
Well, first of all, I mean, you know, it's got such a history, such a rich history. There's so many great alumni out there, you know, working. And I mean, what makes it great? I mean, the faculty when I was there was unbelievable. The Moscow Art Theater was there. We had a Bulgarian Moscow Art Theater director who taught us Chekhov. Maggie Smith's rival in England growing up, like her kind of rival for parts, taught us Shakespeare, ancient Greek. The voice and speech department was amazing. We learned the phonetic alphabet. I learned how to speak foreign languages, dialects, kind of the math and science of acting. Acting lab, the history of drama teachers were great. So I would say that, like, you know, the faculty, the curriculum, but also, you know, you've got like 1,000 kids from around the world that are trying out for like Carnegie Mellon Juilliard at the time, would have been North Carolina School for the Arts, and CMU would get the cream of the crop. And so you got to go to school with other young people who were willing to sell their soul at that age and were really serious about acting, but also really talented. And so, you know, I think, you know, steel sharpens steel, and I think that that there were such great faculty, such great actors, and you know, I mean, it was. They put the fear of God in you. At the time, you would get cut. They would cut kids. So they cut a lot of kids. Really hard to get in, and then they would cut you if they didn't think you were up to snuff. So, you know, there's a lot of pride, I think, in that. But yeah, it's a great program, yeah.
And do you still have any friendships with anyone you went to college with there?
Sure. Well, I mean, I did the Magic Mike movies with Matt Bomer, and Matt and I were in the same class at Carnegie Mellon. Josh Gad is here this weekend. Josh was like my little brother. He was an underclassman who I would take out to all the bars in Shadyside and get drunk underage. Because I knew all the bartenders. I'm like, come here, you know, and I would take him out and kind of show him around. So, and he was in class with Rory O'Malley. Leslie Odom Jr. was in his class. So, you know, it was, yeah, and I see, you know, we all see each other around. Patrick Wilson married Dagmara Demenchik, who was on Succession recently, and, you know, so I see them around. Gabriel Macht, Ming-Na Wen, great friend of mine. She's been here. Ming-Na Wen went to Mount Lebanon High School and Carnegie Mellon School of Drama, so we stay in touch all the time. So there's, you know, you see each other all the time, and you really root for each other because you know how good they are. And generally, I think when you get through a program that hard, I think it there's like a quiet humility, I think, to those type of actors because you know there's a respect for the craft and really what acting's all about. So.
So I mean, you did a lot of diverse stuff: Magic Mike, True Blood. How do you prepare differently for different roles? I mean, there's a wide spectrum of of the acting. How do you prepare individually for a role?
Yeah, it's interesting. That's a good question, you know, because like sometimes people will come up to me and they say, did you study Alexander technique or did you study Miser? And I'm like, I don't know what any of those mean because when I was in drama school, they didn't label those. like each teacher taught a different style to us, but they weren't saying, I'm teaching you this technique or that technique. They're just saying, we had one teacher that taught like guided meditation and breathing techniques to release energy from different chakras. So it was more like an energetic sort of like, hippy dippy version of acting. Then we had another teacher who taught text work. Then we had another teacher who taught the phonetic alphabet. You had another teacher who taught, each class would start out with a different exercise. So you were never sure what it was. You were just taking those and putting them into a bag of tricks. My movement teacher, I was always like, like I said, I came from athletics. I always played three sports a year in high school. So coming into CMU, and still even in my career, whether it's True Blood, Magic Mike, I'm a very physical actor. And I like being able to, like in Magic Mike 2, I get to tell this story in the convenience store without words. So there's a beginning, a middle, and an end to this little miniature movie that takes place in the convenience store while my character is high on Molly. Okay, but that scene was derivative of a scene that we did in sophomore movement class called Cafe Smile. And it was an exercise in which you're at a table, you catch eyes with someone, and then you try to do something to flirt with them. But you have to ride this line between sexy and funny. And it was like things can't be sexy and funny at the same time. Like that's the polarity, and you kind of have to stay on top of that fence and not go grotesque or not go too ridiculous where it's not sexy. So it's finding that kind of balance between flirting with someone, and it keeps escalating and escalating and escalating. And when that scene was written into the script, I was like, I know exactly that balance. And so, something like that, sophomore year in movement class, you're not thinking, I'm going to use this professionally. You're just kind of concentrating on that exercise. Come to find out, that was exactly what I needed in that moment. We spent a lot of time freshman year. We went to the Pittsburgh Zoo. Most of my classmates got to choose an animal to study. I was given one. I got the penguin because they wanted to fix my posture. I was so tall, but I was leaning forward, apologizing for my height. So they were going to fix my posture by making me embody a penguin sometimes for 3.5 hours a day. And interacting with the other animals who would just maul me and eat me, and I couldn't fight back because I'm a penguin. And then you would learn how to take that penguin and then use an outside-in approach where, you would use the penguin's physicality, stature, to then develop a character from physicality first, rather than, an internal life. And I thought, this is the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life. I hate this. This is so stupid. But then I get cast as a werewolf. And again, I know exactly what to do. Yeah. I'm going to go and hang out at a wolf sanctuary. I'm going to start spending time with wolves, getting in the pens with them. They would let me walk them, interact with them. I started watching dogs and how they behaved. And I kind of modeled my characters somewhat after like Yorkies. Like Yorkies, they don't care how big you are. They're going to attack and let you know that they're boss. And there's something very endearing about this tiny thing that would just fight with anything. And also the way that it moved, the way that its ears went back when it got angry, the way that it leaned in. And so you start adopting the animal's movements, and then a lot of that stuff is what went into True Blood. And so me growling at other characters, the way that I moved, the way that I jumped, I would grab the vampires, before a conversation even happened, kind of attack before you look, and so again, it's like Carnegie Mellon teaches you it taught me all this bag of tricks. I mean, even like just stuff like surprising directors that I could do a British accent, or I learned how to speak French. I learned how to speak German. I would get cast as characters that spoke those languages. I would You know, I got cast as a character from New Zealand once, which is a tricky dialect, and you know, so you know, it's just this giant big bag of tricks that you know, is like hard to quantify really at the time. You're just getting bombarded every day and working your tail off at school, but then you get out and it's just, you have an endless amount of you know, influences and styles. So every part is different. You kind of look at something and you go, should I have a giant backstory for this? Or if it's a comedy, probably not, but I know how to do it. Like I know what this requires.
So do you find when you're in front of the camera, there's not a lot of retakes? I mean, you sound like you do like a lot of homework and a lot of thought before stuff. Directors have to love that, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, at CMU, their whole view on it was like, a director should never have to worry about you. Exactly. Now, the trick about that is, you know all the actors that are deemed a pain in the ass, you know, whether that's, you know, whatever, the Val Kilmers or the Edward Nortons. Val Kilmer, Juilliard, Edward Norton, Yale. You know, these are very, very intelligent, smart actors, and they want to have a say. And sometimes, you know, I think, you know, having that type of background, you really need to learn how to communicate, because sometimes, you know, you have an idea, you've come to set, you know, you want to have a say over how your character looks, what your costume says, and so I think if you're working with an actor that is trained, like, you want to collaborate, you know, and so, you know, I think, yeah, the good news is like, you're a gorilla who knows sign language. You know, the bad news is sometimes the other gorillas don't know how to do sign language, you know? Yeah. And so, but I think I've always tried to pride myself as being somebody, especially in film where there's so many things the director has to worry about. They can worry about all that stuff and they're not gonna have to worry about me.
What in a script really draws you to the film, like Magic Mike? What, I mean, it really broke a lot of molds. When you first read that script, what really drew you into saying this is going to be something?
You know, I'm a product of the 90s, so I like things that are really challenging. You know, Goodfellas is a challenging movie to watch, and Fight Club, a challenging movie. Pulp Fiction, Seven. You know, these were the movies that really excited me. They were scary. I love, like, Viggo Mortensen's run with David Cronenberg, whether that's like Eastern Promises, History of Violence. Scary, scary performances. When you're reading it on a page, you think, as an actor, your heart starts thumping. Those are the things that I love. That's what drew me to True Blood. It's what drew me to, I mean, the Magic Mike movies, you know, everybody laughs and they're funny, and women like them, guys like that, you know, like, people like those movies for what they are, but, you know, somebody has to go put a silver lame thong on and get out there and do those routines, and it's daunting, you know, and those movies were down and dirty indie movies. Yeah. I mean, we were making like $100 a day or whatever it was on those films, and really, really, you know, inexpensive indie, but it was a chance to work with Steven Soderbergh, right, who's one of the greatest that's ever done it. And again, it was like, I knew how smart he was and how intelligent the humor was. Yeah. And I knew he wasn't gonna like hang me out or make me look bad. I mean, the first conversation we had to have was about the penis pump scene. I'm like, what are we doing here? How do we do this? Because I'm thinking in my head, this could be the worst thing ever filmed, you know, and I'm gonna be involved. And the way he described, there's two guys in the front, in the foreground, they're having a conversation. But then you're gonna see something in the front of their conversation blurry, but like growing up the pump. And the way he described the foreground, kind of rack focus, like, I thought, that's hilarious. Yeah. That's going to be so funny. And after I heard that, I kind of knew, all right, like, I'll do whatever you say. So, but again, like, I like things that are scary. I like things that are outrageous. I like things that, you know, I like popcorn for smart people. I like something where it's fun, it's commercial, but like I'm not afraid to make something about a topic considered base. You know, I mean, vampires and werewolves, like, you know, not considered Oscar fare, but in the hands of Alan Ball, something brilliant. And so I'm always looking for things like that. You know, something that can kind of shock people, or that they thought, boy, I didn't think it was going to be that good. Okay, call me up.
So what was it like, the premiere of Magic Mike? I mean, watching people watch the film.
Well, I mean, like the Magic Mike XXL premiere was, like, people at premieres generally don't scream, laugh, yell, stand up, and they were doing that. So yeah, that was like it was a real cultural phenomena at the time, and you know, it was. I don't think I've ever been in a screening of anything that was as rowdy or as crazy. But yeah, nothing could prepare us for the success.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I guess Warner Brothers bought it as an independent film and wanted to launch it as their 4th of July movie. And I think once we knew that was happening, we thought, oh my God, like, I didn't think anybody was going to see this. This is the 4th of July, like, oh man, you know, like, wow. And but it made complete sense, and you know, you just went with it.
So just a question about that, one last one about it. Did you ever just go into a random theater to watch it just to see how a regular crowd would react to a film that outrageous?
Yeah, so on opening night, we rode around in a party bus and went into the back of theaters. And we went to the big ArcLight Theater in the middle of Hollywood, and then it was playing in the Cinerama Dome. And we actually showed up, and we like threw, I don't know, we threw like dildos and thongs into the crowd before the movie. And like security had to like hold people back. They were screaming. And it was hilarious. So stuff like that, it was really fun. You know, so we would do stuff like that. But yeah, then we would like kind of sneak into theaters and just hang out in the back and see what people's reactions were. And it was fun to see people screaming and going wild. You know, yeah.
We're going to get to questions in a bit. I want to ask you
Very
about...
serious thespian stuff here. Yeah.
We'll switch gears. I'd like to talk about you getting behind the camera and directing. How did that come about? And do you have any kind of, like, you take your acting experience behind the camera? Does that help you quite a bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a long history of actors that also direct, because you know how to talk to an actor. You know how to speak artist, and you know how to, I think there's a respect that we have for each other, but also, you know, we're looking at it a little differently. You know, when I get to direct other actors, or you know, like I know you do this thing. There's this thing you do. You know what I'm talking about? Do that. Like I want that. That's what this moment is. You know, like there's a shorthand, and you can kind of stay out of each other's hair, because I think there are times, especially when I was a younger actor, and I didn't know how to like speak up, that, you know, a director would come over and start explaining the scene to you, explaining all. It's like, I got it. I did all the work. I'm here. I know what it is. Just like the smallest little bit, those little tiny, just click the dial, like one click. Actors, I think, know how to talk to each other that way, which is why, you know, I think you see, gosh, you know, Clint Eastwood, Mel Gibson, Kevin Costner, you know, these are great directors that came from acting, because, yeah, they understand that side of it.
Any particular directors that you were inspired by?
I mean, you know, yeah, I mean, as an Italian American, you know, I grew up with Coppola, Scorsese, you know, even like Elia Kazan's work with Marlon Brando, James Dean. He came out of stage, you know. But coming up, I mean, you know, Pulp Fiction changed my life.
It changed everybody's life.
I mean, I saw Pulp Fiction 8 times in the theater, and just, I couldn't, you know, if I had nothing to do on Friday, I'd go to the theater and see Pulp Fiction. So, you know, Tarantino changed everything, and it's hard to like explain to people who weren't around or paying attention during that time that like, he was our Orson Welles, still is. And so, you know, but he's also didn't self-destruct, you know? So he's amazing. I mean, David Fincher's movies were like everything I ever aspired to be. So I remember seeing Seven at the Beehive.
Goes back.
When you could smoke and drink on the couches in the back. And I saw Seven, and I was on a date. And she wanted to like go back to my dorm room after, and I had just seen on screen like what I aspired to in life was Seven. It was like, that's the movie I want to make. That's the role I want to play when I'm young. That would be the role I'd want to play when I'm older. Like, this is it, you know? And I was so shell-shocked by the movie that I was like, you know, she wanted the date to continue, and I was like, I gotta go. And I just walked around Oakland for hours. Just walked around thinking about my life, dreaming about someday getting to do it professionally. Like, movies did that to me. You know, they made me like glimpse a future for myself that was inspiring and exciting. And Fight Club was kind of the same thing. I went to the first screening of Fight Club at the Squirrel Hill, and I walked out, bought a ticket for the next show, got something to eat, and came right back, and saw it twice on the first day. So I was just that kind of a moviegoer. And I mean, gosh, the old Beehive, it was like, I saw David Lynch's Lost Highway. I saw the Reservoir Dogs Pulp Fiction double feature, and we got there early to get the couches. I saw Trainspotting, Kids. I mean, you know, you name it. You just go on and on. I saw all the greats of the 90s at the Beehive, you know, all of them. So it was the greatest. Yeah.
So we're going to get to questions. I have one fun question for you.
Yeah. Were you screaming about the movie Kids? Was that the excitement? I was traumatized by that movie, by the way. I was like, I've never heard anyone get that excited over that movie. That was like,
Well, you didn't bring up Gummo, so.
it was rough. But but it was great. It was the indie craze and all those movies, Swingers. Vince and I just did a movie. I saw Swingers at the Beehive, you know? So yeah,
Awesome. I got to ask you, you have a passion for Dungeons and Dragons. How'd that come about?
Well, I worked for the company, so I was hired to develop Dragonlance as a scripted series for them. And while I was in the process of, you know, settling the rights, yada, yada, they said, hey, what if we paid you to play Dungeons and Dragons live? I said, you want to pay me to play? Yeah, all right, sure. So I then was put on payroll for years by the marketing department. So I would help them market Dungeons & Dragons. And, you know, Dungeons & Dragons, when I was growing up, had a stigma, two stigmas. It was Satan's tool, and it was super nerdy. And, you know, if you mentioned you play it, you were going to get in a fight on the playground over it, you know. And the fact that I was a jock and a nerd, I think, confused the predators. And so... but that's, you know, if you know me, that's kind of, you know, predator prey is kind of like my Venn diagram. And, you know, so I wanted to help lower the stigma. And what I mean by that is make it cool. Yeah. And when I say make it cool, I mean make it satanic. And when I say make it satanic, I just mean like, you know, I liked D&D when it was scary. And it was an outsider part of like underground alternative culture. Yeah. You know, D&D very much is handcuffed to heavy metal. You know, they're in the same jail cell together, you know, and I liked that type of aesthetic. So I wanted to bring that aesthetic back to the game, but also, you know, stop people's eyes from rolling when you said you played Dungeons and Dragons. And I know it's hard to imagine today because it's so mainstream. Right. But like, I had a hand in that. I worked with that company for years, going on talk shows, like saying I played it out loud. It was like coming out, right? And then I would go and I would meet like executives at the studios, and they would like look down the hallway and close the door and say, I used to play Dungeons and Dragons too. You know, like they were coming out to me. I'm like, okay, like, could I come over and see your dungeon? And I'm like, that could be taken the wrong way, but sure. You know, and then it was like, all of a sudden, it was like the Field of Dreams. You know, I built this game room in my house, and it's like every director, rock star, actor, talk show host, pro wrestler, Paul White, the Big Show's here. He plays in my Friday night game. You know, it was like everybody started coming back to the game and thought, okay, like if he can do it, I can do it. And so, you know, I kind of took it on my shoulders and just was like, what are you going to say to me? Like, what are you going to say? Like what, Big Dick Richie? Like you're going to make fun of me? Like I'm, you know, that guy, you know, like what can you say? And so I think, you know, something started shifting, I think, in the culture a little bit about it. But like I said, all of this was happening. I was happy to do it while I was developing Dragonlance. And then while I was developing Dragonlance, they came to me and said, there's never been a documentary. Would you direct and produce, you know, a docu? I said, yeah, like great. And I had already, unbeknownst to them, acquired over 400 hours of footage of all the founding members who are no longer with us. And there have been all these failed documentaries. I took all the footage together, went out, shot another 150 hours of footage with all my friends and people who had never spoken about playing before, but were like, all right, if you're in it, I'll do it. And so, so that's really how I got involved. I mean, you can really chalk it up to Larry Elmore's artwork on the red box is what really attracted me to it first, and then Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman's Dragonlance novels. I love them to pieces, and I'll travel the ends of the earth for those two, and hopefully someday I'll be able to call action on set of a Dragonlance series. So fingers crossed.
Awesome. Wow, that was a fabulous answer. Let's get to some questions from the audience real quick. We got time for about a handful of questions there. Knock them out.
Okay, it's a rapid fire D&D related question. First character, favorite edition.
Okay, first D&D character, Elf, which is your class and your race. Elf, in the basic set, in the red box. Favorite character, Archon the Cruel, please. And favorite edition, Mike Merles' 5th edition, like that first half of 5th edition. I call it Renegade 5th edition, like 2014 Legacy. I love it, yeah.
Next question, let's knock some out.
Hi, how was it working on Pee-wee's Big Holiday?
How was it working on Pee-wee's Big Holiday? It's hard, man. Boy, I miss Paul. I miss Paul a lot. Man, I'm getting choked up, boy.
Some water.
You know, thank you. I love Paul. I had a dream about Paul about a year ago, and in my dream, Paul played a practical joke on me, like in my dream, and I was like laughing and like he got me, you know, which was like what he used to do in life. And I just thought, man, if anybody would pass away, go to the other side, and spend all of his time figuring out how to pull practical jokes on his friends while they're sleeping, it would be Paul Rubens. And that's just the way he was, man. I love Paul dearly. I miss him a lot. He was the greatest. He wrote that part for me, like as Pee-wee's best friend. It was, I mean, as somebody who went to the theater to see Pee-wee's Big Adventure when it came out, I could recite every single line of dialogue in that movie. I did it to Paul all day long. To be able to be asked to be Pee-wee's best friend was like, man, it's just one of those things that there is no bucket list for something like that. It was just like being in a dream. So I miss him a lot. I think a lot of people miss him a lot. Yeah.
Next question over on that side of the room.
Whoa. This is not an acting question. I saw your segment on finding your roots, and you're welcome to come to the picnic now.
What do I bring to the cookout? Let's go.
Don't bring potato salad. But how was that? I mean, he's a great guy,
Yep.
and finding out your history, how,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, can you just kind of elaborate like how you felt when you found
Sure.
out?
Yeah, so the question's about finding your roots. So if you haven't seen it, it's on Amazon. It's part of season 9. I spent 10 years trying to get on a genealogy show because there are these mysteries to my own bloodline. On my mother's side, I'll start with that. On my mother's side, I'm descended from an Armenian genocide survivor. My great-grandmother escaped the genocide. Her village was razed to the ground. Husband was murdered. She lost 8 of her children were murdered in front of her, and her 9th child died in her escape swimming across the Euphrates River. The infant died on her back, and she lost all of her children, was shot, was put in a refugee camp, and gave birth to my grandmother there. And my grandmother's father was a German soldier who was stationed in the Ottoman Empire at the time, and no one knew who he was. And so my grandmother was not allowed to know who her grandfather was, this German soldier who left my great-grandmother in the camp to give birth to the child. So I spent 10 years trying to find out who this German was. And none of the shows would take me because science just wasn't there yet. Finally, I got a call, I went on the show, and they found out who the German was. But they also called me and said, we have to give you the option of opting out of the episode because there's a paternity issue on your father's side. Your father's father, your grandfather, Emilio John Manganiello, is not your father's father. Do you think your father knows that? I said, no, nobody knows that. I said, so I'm not a Manganiello? They said, correct. You're related to 0% of the world's Manganiello population. I said, do you know who the man is? They said, we think we do. But somebody needs to tell your father in order for you to do the episode. So my dad agreed to do a DNA test. And I went ahead with filming. And when I got to the filming, they say, you know, turn the page. They have this book of life, and you turn the page. And as it turns out, my 5th great-grandfather is from Africa. They believe he was a slave from Africa who earned his freedom and then joined the Continental Army and fought the British in the American Revolution and has like a monument to him. And so my grandfather's military records, he identified as a black man. So my grandfather was black, and he was mixed. It was African, Irish, British was how it came out. So then it became this quest to find out the rest of it. And so I've spent the past 3 years doing, with historians, a bunch of research on that 5th great-grandfather. His name was Plato Turner. He's fought in the Revolution. My 3rd great-grandfather was a preacher in Boston. And he listed on his 3rd marriage, I found the marriage certificate, and he had to list who his father was, and he listed the name of a plantation owner in Virginia, and who, as it turns out, was part of one of the founding families of Virginia who came over on the first boats to the New World in the 1600s. So like, I'm involved with all sorts of things that, you know, all sorts of like American history that I didn't think I was involved with. And so, yes, I accept your invitation to the cookout. And as it turns out, I think my last name should be Jones. So Joseph Jones, after this Major Churchill Jones of Virginia. So there you go. And then there's more, and it goes on and on and on. And so actually Dr. Gates and I just did a talk at the Aspen Ideas Festival, which there's a link on my Instagram. I now fly around the world and talk about genealogy with Dr. Gates. And we're talking about doing a sequel episode because I've uncovered so much since then, including the German family tree, which goes back to the 1400s, and the Kingdom of Württemberg. It goes on and on and on. So it's become this kind of like one of my purposes in life is also talking about, you know, I am victim and perpetrator on both sides. And so putting people into categories is not something that I take lightly. I think that there are nuanced conversations about human beings. I think everyone is different. I think that people aren't who their ancestors are in certain ways, maybe are in other ways, but like, it's having those nuanced conversations about history and not being afraid to talk about, what we are, what we aren't, where we come from, I think is of the utmost importance. And so,
Great.
So Dr. Gates and I are going to be talking at Loyola Marymount on January 11th. So if anyone's in California, we'll be there.
There you go. Let's get time for 2 more questions. Are you headed back to your table to sign, or you got a photo op? What's happening with
I got
you?
a little time, I think.
Okay.
I think
You
I
got some time?
yeah.
All right, let's do a few more questions.
Hi. How has your time as an actor influenced you as a director? Since you've done both, like you can kind of understand like both sides of it.
Yeah, like how does being an actor influence being a director? I mean, I'll say this. I think at its core for me, and I realize this as an actor being up on stage, there's a real connection between the audience. When you're on stage as an actor, especially like in a live performance, there's an umbilical cord that's kind of, you all have a certain energy, like a combined energy, that forms one umbilical cord that hooks into me. And whether I'm looking at you or not, or even see you out in the dark, I can sense you. When people laugh, when people are having a good time, when people aren't having a good time, I can feel it. I can feel it all. And I think a lot of times there are directors that get lost in the technical aspects of shooting a movie. There's could be a couple hundred people on set, cranes, special effects, cameras, film stock, all of these complicated things that need to be dealt with. And I think what can be lost is fostering a performance or making the situation as good as it can be for the performers. And I think that as a director who comes from acting, the story is what matters. It's all just going into the story. It's not about anything but that. And it's about trying to present this story in a way that's going to make people feel something. And so that's what I think I bring to it, because that's where I come from as an artist. It's an art form to me. The lenses and all that stuff, great. Yeah, we can talk about all that. That's great. But I think that first and foremost, it's about, setting up an atmosphere in which a moving story is primary, and then putting people around you that can help you, shoot that picture. I think is, where I get the help, or secondary.
Let's grab one more question. Can't thank you enough for doing this, though. This is awesome.
It's nice to be back home. Please.
It is.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks.
Hi, I'm just curious. Who have you enjoyed working with the most? And then if you can say who would be the least.
We can stay with just the most. Most is good.
Well, I mean, obviously, if you couldn't tell, Paul Rubens was one of them, big time. True Blood was super fun because there's so many great theater actors on that show, and I come from theater. I know people probably don't think that because of some of the stuff that I've done, but like, I talk theater, with people. I host a game show now, and Alan Cumming hosts another game show for the same studio, and when we get together, we talk theater, even though we're game show hosts. But like, there were a lot of Yale, Juilliard, Mike Millen, who played the Reverend Steve Newland on True Blood, was a Carnegie Mellon kid. He was another little brother I used to get drunk underage. And it's a lot of that. And so it was just like a lot of great actors on True Blood that were really fun to play with, because on that show, you really, you take the work seriously, but you can't take yourself too seriously, because I'm the werewolf, she's a fairy, he's a vampire, but we had a lot of fun. Magic Mike was really fun in bonding for us, when you got to get up there and do group routines and thongs with other men. There's a bond that forms from that. So that was great. And then, you ask like, oh, who's the least? It's like, well, here's the thing. Like, I'm a circus performer. right? I ran away and joined the circus at a young age. And I've been bouncing from circus to circus for like 25 years as a professional. And some of those circuses, some of the worst of those circuses are the best stories. So sometimes you're like, no one's gonna see this. This is a nightmare. I wanna kill that director. But these are gonna be the best stories that I have once I can laugh about them and I'm not pissed off. So I'll say that, it's all good, at some point. Even like the worst stuff you've ever been through, the worst experiences are the ones you laugh at the hardest later. So I'll say that without saying names.
Awesome. Well, can't thank you enough. Welcome back to Pittsburgh.
Sure.
Always a pleasure. Go Manganiello!
There we go.
There you go. Headed back to his table to sign. You know you want to hang out with him.
Cool.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
He's still in the room. One more time.